Hey family, it's Tasha Margaret prepping. You already know what time it is, baby. Get your drink, pull up, let's talk about it. So I woke up to a doozy. I actually got a message. Shoot, I saw it this morning, but I actually got it yesterday, and it was about a report on Ebola, possibly a possible Ebola case that hit the GW hospital in DC. And of course, that message went out, followed up with an update that never mind, there is nobody there with Ebola, and then followed up with a bunch of other tweets of basically saying, hey, I know this was possible. I think the person probably got attacked for doing it. And they were like, look, I got credible sources and I got something. And there was nurses saying the same thing was happening there as well. Probably what happened is and the person was tested and they didn't have Ebola, right? But we can't be so, the world around us is already crazy and already is on the train of misinformation and on the train of, this is what you're supposed to look at, what the agenda and what they want us to look at. And so when you get information like this, it's not to panic, it's not to freak out, it's not even necessarily to believe it all the time. But it is important to follow it, to understand it, to see what happened, and to understand that it could be not right, or it could be possible, but then it turns out to be okay, and it ends up not being what the person thought it was. That doesn't take from the fact that that happened, and they were worried about that. They were worried that they had somebody with symptoms, right? And so watch that stuff. I watch that stuff because I want to know the second that anything like that is in the country, okay? Now, today's video is not even about, Ebola. Today's video is about other stuff that's been in the news, other stuff that's been happening, and that's earthquakes. North California is actually getting hit pretty hard right now because they've got these earthquakes happening over the last several weeks. They also have, crazy weather. Now, the rest of the country and us, to be included, everybody has been kind of dealing with their own level of crazy weather, right? Whether that's wind, whether that's rain, that's sleet, that's ice, that's snow, that's all of the above, that's blizzards. People are dying. It's horrible, okay? Weather is not our friend right now. And Northern California is about to get hit again with what they're calling a bomb cyclone, like just heavy, heavy rain, right? And they were already recovering from, because when it rains in California, they have crazy mudslides that happen after that. That's the most dangerous time, is the mudslides and all that stuff that happens after. Now, Northern California, I think, is a little bit more versed to that because they get a little bit overall rain compared to Southern California. Southern California, they lose their mind because they finally get rain and then they have to deal with mudslides. Or there's fires, then all of a sudden a lot of water's put down and then they have to deal with mudslides. Northern California is a little bit different because they do get more precipitation, they do get more snow, so they deal with this stuff kind of like where I'm from, Pacific Northwest. We deal with this stuff, but it's out of control. Like everybody else is dealing with weather this year. It's out of control. It's a little extra to have to deal with and prepare for. But for those of us prepare, you got this. You've got this. Just continue to do the things that you need to do to prepare. Continue to watch the news closely, your local news, to understand what is going on. I have several apps that I watch because some of them I feel like aren't very accurate, and so I try to watch several apps and asking about, viewing my local area. And then I kind of mold them all together to determine how the weather's going to be, okay? Because not one of them is totally accurate and trustworthy, in my opinion, for getting me ready for frost and different weather patterns and different things, okay? So you got to do what you got to do. Earthquakes, I have an app for that, right? Now, earthquakes, the thing with earthquakes is people will be like, a lot of folks that watch channels like this, preparedness channels, they just gloss over when they hear earthquake because it's like, well, we don't have earthquakes where I live. I don't have to worry about that. That's a California problem. Well, it's really not. There's fault lines everywhere. Now, if you're on the West Coast anywhere, baby, this better be something that you prepare for, right? The best that you can, that you prepare for this. And hopefully you're not one of these people that say, well, when the big one comes, it's going to be so bad. I'm not going to prepare for it, right? Like, that's the silliest thing I ever heard in my life. Like, you choose to live here, you should choose to prepare your family to get through that event the best you can, because it is going to happen. It happens every day on a lower level. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4.0s all day long, all up and down the West Coast. So that's California. That's not just an LA thing. That's all of California. That's all of Oregon coast, that's all of Washington coast. All of us are getting it, okay, and have different aspects of what we're preparing for, because we're preparing for earthquake, you're preparing for tsunami. Where are you at on the map? How does that affect your family, your life? What's the plan? I mean, depending on where you live, you better have a plan B to get hot, because when the big one hits, as an earthquake, it's not just the earthquake that's going to cause detrimental, devastation, right? That tsunami afterwards that just comes to cleanse it and wipe it all away. Okay. And so if you're not prepared for that, if you don't live in a certain area, or you don't have a plan to get away from a certain area, and you're just living on that beautiful coastline, you need to be careful. You need to be very careful, because it's one of those things. It's like volcanoes. It's going to happen. Okay. It's just a matter of time. It's going to happen. Maybe it doesn't happen in a lifetime, right? Maybe the big one doesn't happen before I pass away. Who knows, right? But you should prepare for it. There's fault lines in other parts of the United States that people don't understand are there, because they don't go off, they don't cause earthquakes of magnitude very often or at all, right? They do a lot of lower level stuff, and it's a lot of rural areas, so it's not as impacted or noticed maybe as a city that's built on top of a fault line. I mean, you feel every ounce of that, okay? But everybody should prepare for earthquakes and different scenarios like this, because baby, where do you think all those people on the entire West Coast are going when this finally hits? They're migrating, they're fleeing. Now, is there families that will absolutely stay? Yes. There'll be families like me that purposely plan to stay, rebuild, make it through, fight through whatever we got to get through, survive. And then you have folks that will stay because they think they don't have the option to leave. They don't have the income, the funding, the people, place to go, whatever it is. The reasoning behind it is they're like, we can't leave. We're stuck here. And I think, to be honest, I think that would be a lot of immigrants, people that came to this country, people that have already gone through different things, gone through several things. Those people, I think, will dig in. I don't think those will be the people that just get in their car and be like, we can't live here, right? I think those people are the people that are going to buckle down, like the survivor, like the prepper types. They're going to be like, we can do this. We can make it. We can rebuild. We've got this, right? They've got their family there, and they're going to do it, right? I think it's going to be all the people, all the sheep that aren't paying attention, that aren't hard workers, that gloss over any kind of that anything bad could possibly happen. The ones that think an earthquake will never happen in their time, or if it will happen, it's no big deal. And then they just move on. Those people will flee. And where do you think they're going? They're going to your state. They're going to your beautiful state where you never have to worry about earthquakes. And that's where they're coming, right? And so there's almost, I'm not saying prepare for refugees or prepare for, but one day major earthquakes are going to happen, and those people are going to come your way if you're not one of those folks that live in those areas already. And there's other fault lines, like Missouri. When we were preparing and we were looking at different states and trying to figure out where we were going to live, right? Missouri started having these earthquakes, not major earthquakes, nothing crazy, but it kind of was crazy on the news. It was kind of crazy in the feed because that area doesn't really deal with earthquakes, right? But there's a fault line. Earthquakes happen in Texas and Arkansas and that whole area right there. Missouri, there's a fault line down there, right? And so once in a blue moon, it goes off. It sets off some earthquakes. People feel it. But it doesn't happen all the time. So again, it's not, that big of a deal. Think about all the people that move there a year that have no idea that fault line is there and that even earthquakes happen, right? Because people have this thing in their mind that, that's a California problem. That's a California problem. Well, really, it's a whole West Coast thing. And anywhere in the United States, so there's a fault line, baby, there's fault lines. So I would suggest that if you are the type that prepares for things, I'm not saying panic, but I'm saying when you get a chance, grab your coffee, start Googling, and see where the fault lines are within the United States. Where's the closest one to where you live, okay? Because it might not be Cali. It could be some crazy off event on a totally different fault line that we're not even really talking about, that we don't talk about at all, that goes off and causes some crazy black swan event. And then those people are the people that are in trouble and need help and need somewhere to go, okay? And so I think everybody prepare. Another thing is, I feel like I always see things in the preparedness world. A perfect example is shelving. I'm a huge fan of shelving with doors. And it's because I've been stationed in California several times. I'm from Oregon. I live in Washington State. So earthquakes has been embedded in my DNA from jump. This is something you have to prepare for. And so it kills me that I see like beautiful pantries, beautiful food in jars. Somebody has spent their life or months or whatever years canning and making beautiful, beautiful preservation. And then they have it on the shelf and they have it all the way stacked to the front. And so I think it's important that even if you don't live somewhere where it's prominent earthquakes, anything can happen. A sonic boom can happen. Anything can happen that shakes and rumbles your house, and then those jars end up falling. And there's simple things that even if you have open shelving, shoot, go to a Dollar Tree, get you a bunch of bungee cords and do bungee cords in front of those jars in the front of your shelving, okay? Even putting, rubber band chain, a piece of rope, put in some little I don't know what they're called, but bolts or nails, those little please just stop, because I can't think of what it is I'm talking about, but something to affix the rope to or the bungee cord to and strap it across. I mean, if you have shelving where the doors, again, I like shelving that has doors where the door kind of locks in place, like it kind of, does something, and not just shut, because again, what happens during an earthquake is there's a lot of jumping around. Those jars are going to be jumping up and down within the cabinet. And so they can easily, hit the doors and open them up if they're just like a simple close. And they're not. So even, looping with a anything to lock those cabinets during the day, or a bungee cord still in the inside, even though you have the doors. But think about that stuff. Like in my house, there is no over the couches, over the beds, anything that's heavy or that could physically really hurt us. You see behind me, I have a couch and I have all these picture frames. You're like, girl, I see a bunch of glass. I see a bunch of picture frames. I see a bunch of stuff that could fall. That stuff up there is not falling because none of it is attached by nails or anything to that effect where it's clipped on and can easily bounce off. Because when you have nails, when you have different things like that, it bounces off. Stuff is moving and it's going to pop up off of the nail and fall on you, okay? And so first of all, everything we have is very light, and then it's attached to the wall with a ton of sticky adhesive, right? So that stuff's not coming down unless that actual wall comes down, right? Above beds, all the beds in the house, my go-to thing above beds is a wreath, okay? Because a wreath is light, it's airy, it's, if you could fall, it could fall down on you in the middle of the night, you probably wouldn't even wake up, like super light. And then if there's anything else, it's attached adhesively. Nothing is on nails like that because of that. And anything that is heavy is usually that takes a nail, that takes screws, that takes something like that, has that stuff, and then has straps that actually straps it to the wall as well behind it, right? That you attach to the back of the piece and then attach to other, right? Just so like, let's say it has the two hooks, but then the bottom piece, you put one of these things on there to keep the bottom from just popping in and out, okay, and breaking. Knickknacks, I don't have a lot of knickknacks, but there's ways that you can, connect your knickknacks to the actual surface with adhesive. So you have this nice knickknack, and then adhesive it to the shelving that it's on. But think about where those shelving's at. Any kind of knickknack or something that's up and displayed like that is typically somewhere where people are not at. They're not sleeping near that area. They're not sitting by that area. There's no way for that thing to, during an earthquake, fall down and crack them on their skull, okay? That stuff matters. Knowing in your house where to go, right? Where's the strongest part of the structure of your house if your house was just to crumble right now? We have these beams. These beams run the entire, they're not just a room beam. These are beams that run the entire length of the house, and there's several of them, right? What is the middle of your house? What is the part that has the stronger structure? Knowing those basic things should be everyday stuff that you're teaching your kids, just like you do like a fire drill and where's the safest place to go in the house. But earthquakes, I'm not saying if you don't live on a fault line that you should be preparing in the sense of you should be stacking rice and beans for all these refugees that will come. No, but you might be surprised that there's family or friends that maybe you don't even talk to that much, or maybe you do, okay? There's no plan for them to ever come. There's no conversation of them to ever come to your home, come to you for help, whatever. but something of that magnitude that happens is going to be catastrophic, and the entire United States is going to be involved in helping those people. And so, you know, you might find yourself with a friend calling you up and saying, me and my family are displaced, we have nowhere to go, can we please come, right? And so how do you prepare for that? How do you ensure? And if you prepare for bartering or little bags or anything extra for other people that you plan to have come to your house, it's no different, right? This is kind of a what if, maybe nobody ever comes, but just being prepared that you have a little something, and you're really just preparing as if a guest is coming, okay? What would you do? Extra toothpaste, toothbrush, different things you would put together, hygiene stuff, some basic, if you're stockpiling staples, right? You're stockpiling that stuff for situations like this as well. I mean, you just never know who's going to call and be like, I need help, okay? And it's huge. This little thing that happened recently in Northern California, you know, Rio Del, right? And Ferndale. The day that Ferndale had the 6.0, 6 point something, the same day Rio Del had an earthquake as well, but it was under 5.0, okay? And then every few days after that, maybe I think 3 more times, Rio Del kept going off, but they were under 5.0s. And then finally we have this 5.4 that happened in Rio Del that they're talking about. So anytime earthquakes happen, they happen like that. There's aftershocks, they happen with a bunch of them together. That's also a warning, because if you have a bunch that are 5s, 6s, 7s, you're getting up there and you have several like that, that's like a sign that something bigger is coming, okay? Because was that the main shebang, or is that just kind of warning earthquakes? And so that's kind of the scary point, is when you do see earthquakes, and a lot of them, and the bigger ones, I really just care about 6.0 and higher. You know, I like on my tracker, I have 5.0, but a lot of times I look at it and then I find myself getting complacent and not really caring about it. And that's what happens. That's what happens to all people that live on the West Coast. They get complacent. Oh, this is never going to happen. Or they happen so often, these smaller ones, these 3.0s, these 4.0s, that it's just every day. And so it's not that big of a deal. You get complacent. You could live here. There's people that live here and do zero preparation for earthquakes. They do not do anything. They're just like, they either believe it's going to be so catastrophic like these movies, and they're not going to make it, or they just choose to just not think it's not really going to happen, right? Or we're making a big deal about something that's not to be made a big deal, right? Just like a lot of the country ignores any kind of advisement about earthquakes, because they're like, well, earthquakes don't happen where I'm at, so I don't care. But I would tell you right now, make sure after this video, just Google and see where the fault lines are in this country, or any country that you live in, and see what fault lines are around you and what happens. You know, Oregon coast, off of the coast, right? They get hit with 4.0s like nonstop, right? And a long time ago, I used to get all frantic about off the Oregon coast, all these earthquakes. I'm like, man, this is a sign, like something big is about to hit, right? But they're so common there. So I can just imagine the people that live on those coasts, you know, yeah, maybe when it gets a little to the 5s, they're like, okay, stuff's moving. But it's so easy to get complacent, even the folks that live there. And so if you live on a fault line, live near a fault line, if you live anywhere on the West Coast, you should be preparing for 2 things. And what you and your family are going to do, what is the action plan for an earthquake and then a tsunami? What is your action plan? Do you live somewhere where the tsunami could actually make it to you? How far inland are you? Look that up. And that's the entire West Coast that could be an issue for. So don't be thinking, oh, well, I live on the coast, but I live north and I live west of this. You know, listen, baby, better figure it out so that you're not panicked when things happen. This little bit of the thing that happened, thousands without power. The water system went down right away. And that's the thing with the earthquake, is when it happens, you have pipes bursting, breaking, you have water compromise right away, you have power lines down, no power, electricity problems, people getting electrified. So it's not electrocuted. It's not just like, okay, there's no power, no big deal. No, there's structural damage. There's roads that are destroyed, washed out. There's water issues where it's a boil notice as soon as it happens. Just assume that the water now is compromised. You know, you have to worry about gas lines, gas line explosions, anything that's been disconnected, pilots in people's homes. I mean, it's going to be an inferno when the big one hits, or a decent sized one hits. That town, wherever that hits, that's an inferno. There's going to be fires everywhere, okay? Fires everywhere, water everywhere, displacement, people not being able to even leave or travel. They can't even get to a place on a bicycle. You know, you're going to have people that are hurt, people buried under buildings and structurals, trapped in their homes, you know, and, you know, all of your EMTs, your police officers, they're going to be in the same boat that you are, right? Unless they've really prepared and their structures are like they've really thought about, which I'm sure some of these areas have, but those places are down, you know, and they absolutely do not have enough people to service all the people that are going to have issues. 911 is not going to be a thing. It will not be working. It will be so, even if it was up, it's going to be so overloaded, you're never going to get through. And so you preparing and having the things in your home, you know, you talk about, well, it's just going to mess up my house anyway, so I'm not going to prepare. Could you at least get some meds and medical supplies and in your house, and have some food and have some water, because you might physically be trapped in your house for days. And you need to have food, you need to have water, you need to have a way to give yourself medical aid, right? First aid, first responder for possibly your home, your neighbors, people crying out for help, your elderly neighbors near you, people that are hurt. Like, there's not going to be help right away. And so it's going to become, what do you have and what have you done to prepare for that situation in your home, and to be trapped, basically, where you can't just get out and go somewhere, like, let's leave, it's horrible, right? So you've got to prepare for that stuff. So hopefully those of you that are a large population that kind of just let this gloss over earthquake and you just don't really care, I'm saying that you should care, especially if you live in certain areas, and think about where and look where you live and what could happen in your area. You know, I had no idea really, or had never really thought about fault lines anywhere in the United States. So when I learned of that fault line that like is part of Missouri and down there, I was like, wow. And I didn't even learn about it until the earthquakes happened. And then I was like, oh, wow, they have earthquakes down there. And then I started researching and I was like, oh, there's a fault line there, you know? And so it's, although it's not something that is talked about all the time, and it's not, you know, predicted to just have these major earthquakes like it is on the West Coast, like that's predicted that the big one's going to happen one day. We're talking 10.0, 9.0, 10.0, 11.0, like huge, right? Devastation. And they don't talk about that maybe necessarily with these other faults. That doesn't negate the fact that there's other faults, right, that you possibly live on, and that you should just prepare a little bit, right? And if you prepare for anything, you're probably already prepared in the sense of you have the things, you have the food, water, your basic emergency preparedness items, right, if something happened. And if you live on the West Coast, baby, you better be getting your stuff together, your ducks in a row, so that you're ready when this hits. Because it doesn't matter if it hits tomorrow, it hits 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you need to be ready, okay? Because it's gonna be a hard event for people to make it through, right? So, and you talk about down powers and EMPs and the devastation of an EMP. It's almost like that in a sense, but just in a concentrated area of the United States, meaning everything will be down. There will be no hospitals with backup generators, possibly. You know, that stuff is going to go down, and the generators maybe are going to be even damaged. You know, are they even okay to be able to continue to, you know, and then for how long? And there's no way to get gas. So it's going to be an utter chaos, right? And people are going to die, and it's going to be a rough time, and it's going to be hard because a lot of people are possibly not going to be able to get news in and understand even what is happening and how big the scope is, especially if you're talking about multiple states that this is affecting, right? And people talk about, well, it's only going to be either Washington, Oregon, Cascadia, subduction zone, or it's only going to be, you know, North California, or it's only going to be South Carolina. It's only going to be one of those at one time. But really, you have no idea, you know, what is in store for us and what is going to affect what. One fault line can affect another fault line. Like, all those are intermingled all the way up to Alaska. Alaska too, crazy earthquakes all the time. People don't really talk about that, but tons of earthquakes, you know, the western side of Canada, all the way up to Alaska, Oregon, Washington, and of course California, which is the one that people kind of talk about the most when it comes to earthquake and tsunamis. So I never understood too, this is one thing, if you talk about, well, what would you do to fix it? Well, I would probably make sure that every single coastal town from any of the simulations of a big one tsunami event, however far inland that takes, that all of those towns have tsunami towers, which are big towers that just basically a big staircase that's a strong structural case, and people just climb up it basically and get to the top. And there's different platforms, right? Different levels or one level. Of course, it's expensive. Of course, we're never going to do that. We can't even handle using our money to pay for real structural stuff, infrastructure stuff. Why would I think we would ever prepare and actually have these things prepared? There's military bases that I've thought since the beginning of time. Why do the military bases not have these tsunami structures, these something in the event that when these events happen, to protect those folks, to protect those military folks, since they're the ones that are going to be called on? No, it's just going to happen, and those people are just going to be part of the affected area, and that's it. And a lot of people are gonna perish. So I hope you guys are well. So be well, be kind, do everything in love. I hope you guys are having a blessed day. We just started our chicken coop yesterday. Hubby just went to work today, and we started our chicken coop yesterday. We got some of the frame done. We're gonna finish up this weekend, and then I'll have that video on my second channel sometime next week. Hopefully by Tuesday I can have the video, but if not, next Friday. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, bye.